Hey everybody, Demiheals here, and sorry for the kind of change in audio that this one's going to have. To be perfectly honest, I kind of forgot to prep for this review, so we're going to do this completely improv off the cuff. Sorry if it sounds a little bad for that. Anyways, we're going to take a look at a faction that I don't actually have too much representation of in my collection. I was going to say it's my least represented faction in terms of actually having toys for it, but the Quintessons recently gave me one toy, so we're sitting at second least represented, at 2 toys. We've got the Maximal faction, and today we're specifically looking at Power the Prime's Optimal Optimus, or their take on Optimus Primal from the Beast Wars. Now this is an evolution figure, so because of that, we're going to start our look with Optimus Primal here. Now, Optimus Primal, to give you guys a little bit of a closer look, he actually looks pretty dang close to the original Optimus Primal in terms of design. He's pretty faithfully recreated it. I do like that they kept the shoulder guards and the little chest aesthetic. And let me go ahead and give you guys a little rotating shot there. They kept his, red knees and such from his original transformation design and all that. The one thing I will say, they gave him a big ol' backpack. Normally, I would throw a big hissy fit about a giant backpack. Not, jobby levels of throwing a nitpick, but still, would have preferred something a little bit cleaner. Honestly, not too bad of a design in terms of the figure. I do like how they sort of made him a bit blockier in order to match the aesthetic of the Prime Wars trilogy and all that. Pardon the noise if you hear it. Apparently a cat's trying to get in, but she can wait. Anyways, let's go ahead and take a look at posability on this guy. So posability, it's got a swivel at the head, shoulder rotates and moves out. The elbow is on a ball joint, the one ball joint this guy seems to have other than his hips. Sadly, as you can see with the big old backpack, absolutely no waist swivel at all. Nothing there. Hips, moves forward okay. Moves to the side, almost all the way. And, I mean, if you untab the big old backpack, you can get backward movement, but it's like, that's cheating for it. I don't count that. Anyways, other than that, we do have a thigh swivel. We have a double bend at the knee. And while there isn't any ankle articulation, they are molded at a slight pivot. So it does help for that. All in all, posability on Optimus Primal here, it could have been a lot better, and I wish it was a lot better. This figure very clearly was kind of thrown together. If you don't know the history for why this figure was made, I'll get into it as we transform him. This figure was made as the result of a fan vote of which, fan favorite Prime would get a new toy in this toy line. Beating out the competition, I think Starsaber and Deathsaurus both had an option. I forget the whole list. It was a little bit before my time in terms of collecting again. Kind of took a break during the Prime Wars trilogy. But, getting into Primal's vehicle mode in heavy air quotes, if you can call it that, he turns into a surfboard. You might say with the cockpit that it's some kind of space vehicle. It's a surfboard. He just crumples up and turns into a surfboard. Now, I forgot to show this in his robot mode, but there are these little guns that he comes with. The instructions show Primal using them as clubs, but they work a little better as guns. Anyways, let's go ahead and just a really quick size comparison, just so that we can get into the big bot. Here he is with Earthrise smokescreen. Honestly, as you can see, the base figure in his robot mode, if you can extrapolate from extending the legs out and such, he's about deluxe size, which is pretty nice, honestly. So, in terms of getting him combined up into Optimal Optimus, pretty much all you gotta do is untab this section here. Then this will tab in, but I'm going to keep it exposed for a second. His chest piece has this fun double hinge joint here that just kind of folds up. There's a reason that it's not a super tight tab. I'll get into that later. But then, getting his head out is a little tricky. I will usually take the fin from his optimal side's arm and just poke it in there. That usually tends to get it up just enough for me to get my fingers in there. And then that clicks in, turning his head around. Then, 2 tabs here on the bottom. If we take his optimal form, 2 pins there. That should tab in, close everything up, and pin back on that. And here we have Optimal Optimus himself. Getting him rotating. He's definitely a bulkier bot compared to the Primal himself. Due to how Primal transforms, he does end up with a bit of a backpack, but honestly, it's not the worst backpack I've seen on a figure. And I mean, if you really wanted to, you could unfold Primal into a whole C-3PO and Chewbacca bit, where Primal's just on the back of Optimal Optimus. But, like, the size of his knees and all that, like, he's not going to be a proportional bot as this mode, but he's pretty stinking nice. At least in terms of looks. Now, the only painted bit that I know of here... The only painted bit that I know of are his toes. We're getting a little closer look so you can see. The paint is chipping a little bit on him. Not much I can do there, but it is something that is happening. Ooh. Now then, in terms of accessories on this guy, you can bring those guns back that I was talking about. And, taking Primal himself here, as I showed in the vehicle mode, he does have 2 ports up top that they can slide into. So you can get that famous look of having his shoulder cannons up there. Or another thing that you're able to do with this guy is you can extend, or rather flip out on the double hinge there. And then you can plug these in the front. Which looks, honestly, a little stupid, but hey, why not? Not going to be one to pass of a play feature. And of course, he can hold them, but, as you can see here with his hand, the hole is in his very much opposable thumb. And he does have these opposable gorilla fingers. So in order to get any realistic looking holding of him, you either... Sorry, this is a little hard to do while holding him. Well, as you can see, thumbs really like to pop off when you're doing this. But I'm not going to complain right now, because that means I get to plug that in normally. Now then, plugging the thumb back in means you kind of have to do a little bit of a trick work in order to, like, actually get him to hold it. Or you can just give up and have him hold it like this, which just looks kind of stupid. So I usually resort to the shoulder cannons, and thumb pops off again. This figure clearly showing its age a little bit, and it's only a couple years old. Then one final thing of note before we get into posability. These little elbow guard things do pop off. They just tab on with that tab there underneath. But they can also be brought up top to emulate the original toy as well. Not the look I like. I prefer keeping them on the elbows, but it is an option for you. Now then, posability on this optimal form. A swivel at the head, which I do kind of wish it was a ball joint, but I'm not going to complain too much because I can't design something better. We've got a rotation at the arm. Arm moves out and actually has a double joint, so you can get further out than just the original joint would let you get. Swivel at the elbow with a bend. swivel for the wrist, and as I showed, opposable thumb and opening fingers. All on one joint though, not individually posable. No waist articulation as he is, or actually, in some modes you have to untab the backpack in order to get a waist swivel. In this robot mode you do not, but you still want to be careful because this untabs super easily. Hips go forward. They do go back, but you got to watch out for the backpack as well. Getting that back in. Then they do get a very nice split. I don't know if I can get it to go. Yep, very nice split. Knees bend pretty well, but I will admit they are pretty loose. I would tighten them up if I knew how to with this kind of joint. It's not the screw joint, so I don't really know how to do that. Then feet on a nice bend and pivot. All in all, posability on this guy is good, but he does not like to stand for me. It's just a wonder I've been able to get a couple poses with him so far. So let's go ahead and transform him into his monkey form before we get into the jet mode. He is a triple changer, surprisingly. So let's get into it. As you can see, the monkey form is not too bad in terms of actually converting him. Like, it's barely even a conversion, to be perfectly honest. It's more just flipping certain things, spinning him around. There really isn't any genuine difficult transformations to be had here. Alright, and here we have the monkey mode. So honestly, the monkey mode is not too bad in terms of design. It's a little tricky to make him look good, because if you really get him leaning over, you have to bend his head back up into his chest. But if you have him just standing up, his monkey arms won't reach. So it's kind of a balancing act of, do I want to tuck the head in, or do I want to actually make him look gorilla-y? His back is noticeably empty in this mode. That is because there's a couple different options you have in terms of combining Optimus Primal in this mode. But in terms of this one himself, there's not a whole lot to say that I haven't already said. All in all, it's not the best of modes. It's very clearly just kind of thrown in there. The main gimmick was just getting the Primal and Optimal forms to connect. But your two options for connecting Optimus Primal to it, if I can actually get him reconnected to himself. So if we get Primal back into surfboard mode, the reason I call it a surfboard instead of like a shuttle is because there's these tabs on him that tab into Optimal Optimus's feet. If I can get it to work. Sometimes it doesn't like to line up on me. There it goes. And we get the classic gorilla on a surfboard from his Transmetal 1 version. Optimal Optimus never had a surfboard, but Transmetal Optimus did. So that's pretty cool. And then the other option you have for getting Optimal and Primal connected is if you bend this first section back in on itself and tab it in like so. Tab those guns in on those two front sockets. Then bring them in the back. You can line them up, slide that in. And again, this is where I mentioned the waist posability issue, is that actually tabs into the waist as well. So it blocks waist posability, but you do get Optimal Optimus with some guns. And if you thought the backpack was bad on Optimal Optimus, he doesn't like to stand in this mode. He is very back heavy. Because as you can see, running down the entire length of his back is a giant backpack. Not the mode I usually like to have Optimal Optimus with. I usually give him either the surfboard or I just pose him in Primal separately. In terms of posability, everything is the same except you lose knees with how he's currently working. He just has the hips and feet. And then the instruction manual specifically has his double hinge arms extended out, which really doesn't matter too much. You can keep them in a little bit if you want to as well. I just like to expose them. So, as I mentioned, Optimal here does have a third form. It's honestly kind of ridiculous that he had this form in the first place, because it kind of arose from that Transmetal mentality of, well, we're going to give him a transport mode. And then they said with Optimal Optimus that they would give him 2, but they only gave him 1 of his 2 transport modes in this figure, being his jet mode. His jet mode is honestly super easy to convert him to. It's just kind of ridiculous looking, and it doesn't look like it's done when it is. Mainly because there's really no way for the cockpit to tab in. You just kind of tab Primal back on like you would in monkey mode. And then the cockpit just sits here. And here we have, if it'll stay tabbed in, the jet mode. This is a ridiculous third mode. Now, you're supposed to be able to tab in his feet into the side of Optimus Primal's legs. That has yet to work for me, so I just didn't bother showing it. And as you can see, the connection on the waist is terrible. So, Primal's gonna pop off. It's not a when, or it's not an if, it's a when. Primal just doesn't like to stay on in this mode. I don't know if it was this bad when this figure was originally purchased. I got this guy secondhand from eBay. But, oh Nelly. This figure is very much a love piece to the Maximals, but somebody must have had an affair while they were making it. It does not show that much love. Honestly, this figure, I mean, it's the most recent Optimal Optimus we've had from Hasbro. There's definitely better options third party, or just get the original one. Honestly, from the pictures I've seen, just get Biscorita, but he's not a bad figure. For size comparisons here, since I forgot to do them for the other modes, here he is with Power of the Prime's Optimus Prime, and here he is with Power of the Prime's Rodimus Prime, if I can get him to stand up. All of my figures just have terrible standing. And then, of course, here he is with Earthrise Blue Streak. Smokescreen! Oh my goodness. Blue Streak is sitting on my shelf. I don't know why I called Smokescreen Blue Streak. I just don't like the Datsun brothers, I guess. I don't know. Honestly, as I said, if I had to give this guy a score, 4 out of 10. It is fun to mess around with for a little bit. Then it gets infuriating, and then I almost throw it. It's not a bad figure, it's not a good figure, it's an okay figure. I'm not mad at it, because, I mean, it's the first toy I have of Optimus Primal, so I'm very excited for Kingdom to come and give me a reason to just leave this guy in his optimal form. But all in all, it's not a bad figure. There's definitely better options, but if this is your last resort, it's not going to be a super disappointing figure. It's going to be disappointing, but it's not going to be super disappointing. Well, thank you for watching this kind of haphazard review if you did. I'm very happy to say that hopefully in future these reviews will be better, but I just didn't have a lot of time this week to devote to it, and last week I was super caught up with stuff. Otherwise, I would have had this review out last week. But if you enjoyed it, please leave a like, leave a comment if you've got something you want to say, I'd love to respond. And otherwise, just subscribe, stick around. There's going to be some more stuff showing up on the channel, including some new projects that I don't want to say anything about quite yet, but they kind of exciting. I'm very excited to see where they'll go. So stick around if you'd like to. There's going to be some stuff showing up that you may be surprised at from this channel. Thanks for watching, and of course, have a great rest of your day, everybody. Bye.